Down in Atlanta, Georgia, USA, a world-class roller coaster has debuted seemingly out of nowhere at a park that no one could have predicted. ArieForce One at Fun Spot America Atlanta is a brand new ground-up RMC steel iBox coaster that is taking the coaster community by storm. About 2 years ago, when we first heard the announcement that Fun Spot would be working with Rocky Mountain Construction, we thought for sure that the announcement correlated with RMC's new concept for a family coaster, which would be the first for their company. A family-friendly RMC coaster would have made so much sense at Fun Spot Atlanta, a small park focusing on its go-karts and arcade, rather than its coaster collection. But no, Fun Spot decided to shock the world and build not only a full-scale RMC coaster, but arguably one of the best and most aggressive RMCs ever built. This is the type of roller coaster that warrants dropping everything, buying a plane ticket, and riding as soon as possible. So that's exactly what I did. This is my full review and ride breakdown of what could be the best new coaster of 2023, ArieForce One, on Coaster John. First of all, if Coaster John is brand new to you and you enjoy theme park and roller coaster content, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos coming your way. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back and I hope you enjoy. Early on in 2023, myself and a couple friends of the channel decided to seek out a cheap plane ticket to Atlanta to revisit Six Flags Over Georgia and of course visit Fun Spot America Atlanta to ride the brand new ArieForce One. In May, we took a day trip down to the ATL, flying out at 6 a.m., landing at 8 a.m., visiting over Georgia for about 2.5 hours from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and then finally arriving at Fun Spot around 2:30. This Atlanta day trip is totally doable, as both parks are only about 30-minute drives from the airport. So I'm thrilled that we decided to do this and that it worked out great. The main reason the trip worked out so well was getting 12 total rides on ArieForce One, giving me a great idea of what this ride is all about. Before we break down the ride's layout, let's talk about the visual and first impression of ArieForce One. The drive down to Fun Spot on Route 85 heading south gives an incredible reveal of ArieForce One. Built right along the highway, ArieForce One appears out of nowhere from behind the trees and might be one of the coolest things I've ever seen along a roadway. With white steel supports and bright blue and red track, ArieForce One truly pops. We entered the park near ArieForce One and got our single-day admission wristbands at the ticketing and merchandise booth adjacent to ArieForce One. Though I didn't buy any merch, Fun Spot has some really cool ArieForce One gear available for purchase at the aptly named Space Junk booth across from the ride. Themed to air and space travel, as well as just America. ArieForce One is obviously a play on Air Force One, the President of the United States' mode of air transportation. The twist on the name, though, is that it combines Air Force One with the Fun Spot owner's family's name, Arie, giving you ArieForce One. As previously mentioned, I say the ride is themed to air and space travel because even though the ride's station is a mock airplane hangar and the ride is literally named after an airplane, the main theme of the ride is actually space travel, so I guess ArieForce One is supposed to be an advanced version of Air Force One maybe? Who knows? Either way, the theming in the ArieForce One queue and station is really good for Fun Spot standards, and honestly has more theming than some much bigger parks' headlining attractions. I'm looking at you, Pantheon. Along with the theming, ArieForce One also has some really cool looking trains, featuring a large geometric aircraft shape with a blue cockpit on the front of the train. On the back of the white lead car is a very detailed control panel which may or may not feature some park Easter eggs. The rest of the train is painted a patriotic red, white, and blue. America, America. And features stars and wings on the sides, as well as the ride logo. These are some of my favorite RMC trains and are just really sharp looking. Like most new RMCs, ArieForce One's station also includes a big TV which shows the clearance level of all of the seats on the train, indicating whether each lap bar is lowered enough to dispatch the train. Because of this feature, you're able to lower your own lap bar just low enough to get the maximum amount of airtime, while also avoiding the need for ride operators to staple. One downside of ArieForce One are its operations. Though the staff is super friendly and accommodating, they could pick up the pace a bit. The ride operators are trained to check each seat belt individually and then do a second round of safety checks for the lap bars. Some parks do this all in one round, which is much more efficient, but at least they're not quite as slow as Iron Gwazi's operations at Busch Gardens Tampa.
Max score. Max score. Yeah, let's go.
Even though the park was dead on a Saturday afternoon, the dispatches usually took upwards of 5 minutes, which really sucked because that leaves the second train sitting out on the exposed brake run in the scorching hot Georgia sun. What's funny is, for once, I would have actually preferred one train operation so that we wouldn't get toasted sitting out on the brake run. One thing that FunSpot should seriously consider is adding an awning over the brake run. With that downside out of the way, let's focus on the upside, aka ArieForce One's incredible layout. Once the train has been given the all clear, ArieForce One drops down into 2 bunny hills, a nice pre-lift section of airtime before waiting on the lift hill for the block zone check. Once the second train is clear of the brake run, ArieForce One speeds up on the lift hill, climbing to a top height of 155 feet or 47 meters. Once the train crests the lift hill, ArieForce One swiftly drops riders down an 83-degree, 146-foot, 45-meter first drop, giving strong airtime across the train, but most noticeably in the back. This huge drop is definitely one of the best on an RMC, but ArieForce One just keeps getting better and better. After the train valleys, ArieForce One climbs up, angles slightly to the left, and then whips back down to the right into the first inversion of the ride, the Raven Truss Dive. This is one of the best executed inversions on an RMC, giving great whip as well as really cool near misses traveling inside the truss structure. Once out of the Raven Truss Dive, AF1 hits a quick airtime hill, which gives a great little pop of ejector airtime, and quickly rises into another inversion, the massive 0G stall. This is one of the most drawn out stalls out there, dangling riders for a solid 3 to 4 seconds, which many have found to be the perfect amount of time for a quick round of rock, paper, scissors. My friend Nick and I tried this, and luckily I won, so that made the ride just a tiny bit better. ArieForce One's 0G stall gives some of the best hang time of any coaster out there, and I found it very fun to look straight down, behind, and all around the train going through this element. The next element in the onslaught of great elements is the outward banked hill, which hits just as well as the same elements on Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point and Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Outward banked hills give some incredible sideways airtime and are always one of the best elements on any RMC, so this one's no exception. Personally, I prefer this element while sitting in the back left side of the train or the red track side, because this side goes higher in the air. Some prefer the blue side, but I thought that had weaker airtime on the outward banked hill. Once that massive sideways airtime hill bottoms out, ArieForce One traverses through its double up, consisting of 2 consecutive airtime hills. The first of which is okay, giving some light floater, but the next camelback hill is probably the best moment of airtime on the ride, and therefore my favorite element. The first hill on the double up is like the appetizer, while the second larger hill is the main course, giving ridiculous sustained ejector airtime throughout the entire hill. This hill is up there with the greats in terms of ejector airtime, and is in my opinion the highlight of the ride. Next is the aptly named Arcade Roll, which is a tightly profiled 0G roll which whips directly over the arcade building from right to left. Originally, this element was intended to go through the building, but they instead decided to have it travel right above the building, which I think works just as well, if not better. Like with the Raven Truss Dive, this 0G roll gives really cool near-miss effects threading through the white supports, and just barely missing the roof of the arcade. This roll is probably my favorite inversion of the ride, and is definitely one of the best on any RMC because of its insane speed. After the incredible arcade roll is the turnaround section of this out and back L-shaped layout hidden behind the arcade building. The first element of this hidden section is a small outward banked airtime hill, which gives a really strong pop of ejector airtime. This is followed by an intense turn to the right, which can be a nice break before an extremely intense finale. The turnaround goes directly into another 0G roll, which goes the opposite direction than the first, this time going left to right. While this roll isn't quite as good as the previous one, it's still a really good final inversion of the ride. ArieForce One concludes with what many call the quad down, which consists of 4 straight quick airtime hills. In reality though, this final run of hills could actually be considered a 6 down when you factor in the half hill after the 0G roll and the pop of airtime into the brake run. These 6 straight moments of ejector airtime are just insane, and as roller coaster enthusiasts, this is what we've all asked for. What's ironic is that most people's complaints with ArieForce One is that it has too much airtime. Yeah, you heard that right, too much airtime. While I agree that the final onslaught of airtime hills can be painful the more you marathon it, which granted is very easy to do at a small park like FunSpot, we've been begging for a crazy airtime focused ride like this, and beggars can't be choosers, so I don't complain about bruised thighs. There are ways to avoid the painful conclusion. To cushion my thighs, about halfway through the ride's layout, I started to put my hands underneath the lap bar to block my thighs. I suggest doing this either right after the outward banked hill to brace for the massive camelback airtime hill, or during the turnaround to prepare for the finale. Whenever you do place your hands between your thighs and lap bar, either way it helps dampen the pain a decent amount. But I also have another technique. I had a total of 12 rides on ArieForce One, and by about the 8th ride, I found myself doing breathing exercises to try and lessen the blow of each hill. Taking sharp breaths in and out before and during each airtime hill also helped me ignore the pain a lot. While I do agree that maybe 2 or 3 medium-sized airtime hills may have been better than 4.5 small ones, like I said, we really don't have much to complain about with ArieForce One. As I mentioned at the top of the video, once the train hits the brake run, expect to sit there for a little while because the ride operators definitely do not roll trains on ArieForce One. I will say though that this is likely because of how insanely quick the ride completes its layout. On a good day with a full train, AF1 only takes about 30 to 40 seconds to complete its course from the first drop to final brakes, which is why you're almost guaranteed to wait at least another minute or so for the other train to dispatch. Minor complaints aside, ArieForce One absolutely kicks ass. While everyone expected this ride to be a small-scale, family-friendly RMC, FunSpot quite literally went balls to the wall and built not only one of the best RMCs in the world, but one of the best roller coasters ever built. ArieForce One earns a well-deserved 10 out of 10, landing it solidly in my top 5, knocking out Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion down to the 6th spot. While I still prefer Steel Vengeance and Iron Gwazi, ArieForce One truly gives them a run for their money, and I respect anyone who prefers AF1 over those other RMCs. FunSpot America Atlanta working with Rocky Mountain Construction is a really good sign for the rest of the amusement industry. Hopefully sometime soon we see more parks learning that renovating old rides or building new ones with RMC is a worthy investment. I just really hope that FunSpot Atlanta starts advertising their new ride a bit more, because it was kind of concerning to see the park so dead on a Saturday afternoon, while most parks like Six Flags Over Georgia down the road are mobbed on that day of the week. As a company, FunSpot wasted no time working with RMC again, because now the headlining attraction at their Kissimmee Park, Mindblower, received pieces of RMC track to fix its notorious roughness. I heard that it hasn't helped a whole lot, but it is a good sign that RMC is working with FunSpot. For now, FunSpot, well done with ArieForce One. You guys really shot for the moon and actually made it there with this ride. And that's all for this ArieForce One ride review. Have you ridden this RMC work of art yet? If so, please let me know what you thought of the ride. And if not, let me know what intrigues you about ArieForce One. Thanks for sticking around this long. If you haven't already, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking that notifications bell so that you're in the loop for future Coaster John videos. Until next time, this has been Coaster John. Ride on.